Hello, a very good morning to all of you. Welcome to another episode of the Hindu Insider series brought to you by Hindu Youth Network under the auspices of Hindu Endowment Board Singapore. This morning we have a very special guest with us, Miss Myra Lewin. She's actually the founder and director of Hale Pule Ayurveda and Yoga, and she's also the author of two books titled Freedom in Your Relationship with Food and Simple Ayurvedic Recipes, and is also the host of two remarkable podcasts on holistic healing, everyday Ayurveda and Yoga at Halepule, and Spark Your Intuition. So without further ado, let's welcome Miss Myra. Good morning, Miss Myra.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with all of you. And hopefully someday we'll meet in person too. But
Definitely.
okay, so let's talk a little about Ayurveda then. Yeah. And it has so much to offer us. And so we'll talk about it in terms of our food today first, right? So food is either our greatest medicine or it's our greatest poison. So it's not just the food that we eat, but it's also the manner in which we eat it and how we combine it with other foods. You know, in Ayurveda, we look at the human being in a holistic manner. We consider all aspects of our being. So what this means is that we recognize that everything affects everything else. So everything we do or don't do, it matters to how we feel and how we're able to function. So if
Right.
you've heard of Ayurveda, then you might have heard about the doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and they represent the five elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ethers and how those things function in our body. And this is what we look at to reverse symptoms and to treat disease, just so you have an idea. So we each have a unique balanced place for each of these doshas. In other words, there's a place where things are working really as well as they're going to. So what we eat, how we eat it, and our attitude when we eat, they all have a big effect on the balance of the doshas. Now, as human beings, though, we also have something called Agni, and that's critical to our health and well-being. So Agni is the amount of energy that's available to transform anything that we consume into something that your body can use. We hope that it gets transformed into things that increase the light of our consciousness. It's just like a campfire. If you give it some wood and you poke it and give it some air, then it will burn. And if you throw sand on it, then it smolders and it doesn't burn fully. And so this is exactly what happens in our body. So if you take care of, if you feed your Agni, you have a meal, and you allow enough time for that food to digest, then it will be transformed into nourishment, and it becomes part of your body. It goes through your body tissues. And in Ayurveda, we have an incredible way of looking at that, which it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever learned, actually. But if but if you eat and you don't give enough time to digest it, and then you put some more food on top of it, then you have a mess in your tummy. And the nutrients, then the majority of it will not be usable by your body. So if you eat a full meal and then have a snack an hour later, or you snack through the day, or you eat while you're cooking, or you eat or just before bed, none of that food is going to get digested properly. And when it doesn't digest properly, that's when we start to feel, we don't feel that great. We feel our energy's a little low. And then other problems start to happen, and so when undigested food sits in your intestines, it ferments, it causes gas, bloating, burning, constipation, diarrhea, bad breath, bad body odor, and stomach ache, and just feeling not that great, right? And from the irritation then in your digestive tract, That's how we get things like acne and dark circles under the eyes. There's menstrual difficulties, being overweight or underweight, feeling sleepy after eating, and all kinds of skin problems. And also, concentration is difficult when Agni is weakened. So, Agni is your digestive fire, and it's responsible for your metabolism, the heating and the cooling in the body. It's responsible for the light in your eyes and the glow and the quality of your skin. It's what allows us to have enthusiasm for life. And it also dictates then how Agni is functioning, dictates the quality of your muscle and fat and your ability to really keenly perceive things and to sort through things easily. And then there's lots more functions that it's involved with.
Right.
So
So at the start of the session, you mentioned this point of Ayurveda takes a balanced diet and from a very holistic point of view. It looks at your attitude, it looks at the food qualities, and also it looks at the timing of your food consumption and etc. And how so then how can one determine what food would suit one person? Like, I mean, the food has different qualities. So how do we then decide which one suits us, and how do we do that assessment?
well, the simplest way is to we look at food in terms of the tastes that are present. So those tastes then there's 6 tastes, right? Then sweet, salty, sour, bitter, pungent, and astringent. So we need all 6 tastes in a meal in order to feel satisfied. It's just the amount that's important. So the sweet taste, it adds to the body, and so we need plenty of that actually. Now I'm not talking about sugary taste, but sweet things like rice or sweet vegetables. But so we need enough of that, and then we need food that has some bitter taste also, right? And that's what extracts things or draws things out of the body. Then we need the other tastes. We just don't need very much of them. So, for example, we need a little salt cooked in the food, and we need a little bit of sour taste, and we need some pungent, but not too much, and we need some astringent. And those are all things that are present in spices and vegetables and legumes, things of that nature. So we can get those things that way. It's just a matter of understanding how much of them, because when we get out of balance, we will crave the thing that takes us more out of balance. And that's
Right.
where we really get into trouble. Then we just want to eat one kind of food all the time. And this will cause imbalance in your system. It'll cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, and sometimes even the craving, the sweet craving or the urge to, I want to eat something, especially during this COVID period when we are at home most of the time, we're just so tempted to just walk to the kitchen and grab something and to munch something. What's causing that? Is it because we are just isolated and therefore the body is searching for more energy or more food to grind, or what's the reason for feeling such?
Yes. Okay. There's 2 primary reasons that's happening. One is that you're not digesting if you're eating a fairly balanced diet and then you still want to eat, then you're not digesting properly. So Agni isn't working well, and also, well, and one of the reasons that happens, one of the big reasons, is from not chewing the food. You
Mm,
can put all kinds of great food into your body, but if you don't chew it, your body actually can't digest it. And then it could be that you're looking for more nourishment, you see, because the body isn't getting what it needs. But putting more food in there is not the answer. So that's part of the reason it happens. And then the other reason is for emotional, where we're uncomfortable with something that's happening in our lives. And then food seems like a good comforting thing. And so we go and do that. So yeah. Yes. So one of the big things then, is you have to chew the food. And when I'm old enough that it prior to the 1970s, especially it's really started in the West with commercialization of food, and people started going fast, and women were out of the home, and that these are all things that I have to say were, even though they were things that seemed like a good idea at the time, they weren't that great for us. We need, this time of being closed in or being locked down can be very helpful to us to start to see what is a reasonable pace of life, and then what is a reasonable pace of eating. Because if you don't chew the food thoroughly, it does not mix with the enzymes, and therefore your digestion will not take place properly. It has to mix with the saliva in your mouth.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, if you have questions at this point in time, please drop your questions in the comment section below, and we will be more than happy to take them. Moving on to the next question, Myra. In Asian cooking, certain food ingredients like onion and garlic, they tend to be commonly used for its strong medicinal properties. But I've also read that taking too much of them can cause adverse effects. Is that true?
Yes, it is true. And I was a person who ate garlic, especially garlic and onions, a lot. So you have to remember that those properties were measured in a laboratory. That's one thing. Okay. And our body is not the laboratory, and they do have medicinal properties. They absolutely do. But it's primarily for very specific situations. So we use them medicinally in the situation for a short period of time, not ongoing. And the main things that happen is that they're both irritants in the digestive tract, and they cause the mind to become more rajasic, or there's overstimulation in the mind. Yeah, so that rajas is more stimulation, and so most of us don't need that. But and the thing is too, there's another thing that happens is that when you have garlic and onions all the time, the tastes are so strong that you lose the other tastes. In other words, you lose your sensitivity to it. So when I'm working with people, I say, just stay away for 2 weeks and see what happens, because you'll start to taste things that you didn't really even recognize before. And as I mentioned, having all 6 tastes present in the meal is what allows us to have satisfaction, to feel satiated by the meal. And then we don't want it. We don't need to snack.
So, what are the food?
We were talking earlier.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You
Sorry.
go ahead.
Okay. So, what are the food? Sorry, go ahead. I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to you.
Okay. All right. I was just going to say that we were talking earlier about fruit, and how if you cook the fruit just a little bit and put some spices and some ghee in it, then you've got all 6 tastes there, actually, or at least 5 of the 6 tastes, and you can be very satisfied with a nice bowl of cooked fruit, that will take you from breakfast to lunch. And it's interesting because I never thought that I would be able to do that, and actually I do that now, 4 or 5 days a week, and it's wonderful. It's a great way to enjoy fruit.
That's great. That's great. So, what are the food combinations that one should avoid? And yeah, and basically that's the first question. What are the food combos that we should avoid?
Okay. Oh, things like milk and bananas, and milk, well, obviously with any kind of meat or anything like that. What you want to pay attention to is to not having too much heavy food at one time. For example, if you have a legume, you have some beans, you have some rice, and then putting heavy cheese on that, for example, that's pretty difficult for anybody to digest. Yeah. So that's something that's something that doesn't work very well. The other thing you can look at is to look at the extremes in taste. So, for example, it's not a good idea to put, let's say you have some dates, right, that are very sweet. to put that with grapefruit, I mean, most of the time it doesn't make sense. But, milk and cereal, for example, milk with the grains, that's something that was, again, it was commercial. It was advertised and pushed on people. People wouldn't have done that before. So these are the kinds of things that you need to just, see what makes sense. But mostly it has to do with the heaviness and the differences in taste.
Right. Okay, so we have one question here from Sumita. That question is, I'm not sure, are you able to see it? Yeah, so she has
Oh,
asked,
yes, I can.
can we consume food with tamas quality once in a while, or it is best to just completely avoid it? That's her question.
Okay. That's a great question. And so, yes, you can. You can do whatever you want, but one of the main principles from nature that we look at in Ayurveda is cause and effect, which you probably you understand. This is karma. You take an action, there's a result, and so that's the main thing. So yes, I think we all will consume a little bit now and then. You just have to decide how important it is to you, and also pay attention to how you feel afterwards, right? Because if you don't feel well afterwards, then you really need to say to yourself, okay, what am I doing? This isn't good, right? So it's taking responsibility for how we feel, based on our actions. So yeah, mushrooms, for example, are tamasic. They're a fungus. A lot of them in your body is not a good idea. A little bit every now and then, it's fine. Yeah.
Oh no, actually, I love king oyster mushrooms. All right, so there's another question here, and I think you have briefly answered it, but it might be useful to just revisit it. So Tejas has asked, how do we actually define sattvic food?
Right. Okay. Okay. Sattvic food is food that brings balance and harmony to the body and the mind. Right. So that's really the simplest way to put it. It's food that's not excessively stimulating, but very pleasing to the palate, and it helps you to feel good. It'll give you lots of energy, actually, because it's not that difficult to digest, right? And because our energy gets drained when the digestion is difficult.
And that means definitely spicy food is not a sattvic food at all because it causes a lot of uncomfortable and unpleasant
Yeah.
experiences
Right.
too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question here right now from Shilpi Mohanty. So the person has asked, there's so much controversy on milk and dairy product, and what's your take on that? And since ghee is one of the main ingredients in Ayurveda, that's a follow-up question that he has.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. Yes. So dairy, the cow, as you may know, it was considered sacred for some many good reasons. It's a very special creature, and there's some very interesting stories that one can take a look at about the karma of the cow. Now, is it good to take dairy product that has been come from cows that are poorly treated? No, it's not good, of course. But just looking at the dairy itself, well, milk, especially raw milk from the cow or non-homogenized milk, so in other words, it hasn't been changed so much that it loses its best qualities. That milk, why we like it is that it's sweet and it's heavy. And that's something that we need for our body. It's nice and cooling and soothing for the mind. And but it needs to be taken in a proper way. It needs to be at a warm room temperature or warm. If it's taken cold, Agni, your digestive fire, can't handle that. And that's one of the reasons so many people have trouble with it today. And the other reason is because they combine it put it in really poor combinations with things that we know are going to cause some indigestion. And so that's milk. Cheese is one of those things, like we were talking about the tamas. How often do you want to have any of that? And cheese, is something that that we do because it's fun and because we've acquired a taste for it, but it really isn't in its best form. Yeah, if we wanted to be really purist, we'd say, no, cheese is not great, but it's okay. And so that's another thing. I don't recommend, you don't want to use aged cheeses at all, but fresh cheese like paneer and that. But and then ghee. Ghee is such a very special thing that we understand that information from Ayurveda, from the Vedas, and and it supports your Agni, which is very different than other oils. So other oils are fine too, but they actually challenge Agni. So there's just a little bit more difficult to digest. But ghee provides lubrication and nourishment, as well as it has a very pleasant taste as well. So the controversy then comes for a number of reasons. It's about how the cows are treated, which is something to really pay attention to. There are many farmers around the world, that are really working to have good treatment of cows and to provide good quality product. It's a small movement, but it's there. And so you can always look for it because we find it in the most amazing places sometimes. And then the other thing, though, I want to say about it is that most of the time the dairy is taken in poor combination and it's cold and, and also in excess quantity. Those are things that it's just all about the Agni not being able to handle that. So it's not really, so in that case, not so much about the dairy itself at all. It's really about the person. And when you don't chew your food and eat too fast and things like that, then you have a very poor digestive environment that won't handle things like dairy very well, and wheat also.
Right. So, just to extend that question a little bit. So, in order to to really have a good food combination, do we only need to take organic food products, or because the other type of food products seem to be having a lot of chemicals on it? So, how do we then go about doing? And in today's world, it's so hard to always just have access to organic food products. So, what's your take on that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I've been around the organic movement since the 1970s, and I can tell you, I'm very happy that people even know the term now. So it's and so is it important to support it? Yes. Is it an absolute? Well, no. If you don't have access, you don't. It's okay. But what I would pay attention to is to not consume food that has chemicals in it. In other words, stay away from packaged food and things of that nature. So have the best fresh fruit and vegetables that you can have access to. You always just need to do the best that you can, and that'll be good enough, because your attitude also makes a huge difference in how that food and you come together. So, things to pay attention to, though, are things with very thin skins, or things like strawberries. Non-organic strawberries are really quite poisonous and not good. If you pay attention, you'll see how you feel afterwards. But and the other would be root vegetables, things that grow under the ground. So then, in that case, I would peel them. Yeah, and whereas if they're organically grown, then you don't need to peel them. There's good things in the peeling. So in the peel. So those would be things to consider. And then you do the best that you can. Always wash them thoroughly, and see. Notice if you buy something organic, and that see what the taste is like, because sometimes if the organically grown thing if it's been sitting in the shop for a long time, it's losing its prana every day. So, sometimes what you really want to focus on is how do I get the freshest food? Yeah.
Prana here refers to the term
Pardon?
prana. Prana. The term prana refers to.
Oh, the prana. Well, the prana, when speaking of prana, life force, yeah, then when you pick the vegetable, let's just say, yeah, the prana starts going down at that moment. It's okay. It goes slowly, right? And then the idea then is you cook it and you wake up the prana. That's the color change that you'll frequently see in vegetables. And so now it's accessible. This is our signal that it's accessible to our Agni. And so from there, then once you've cooked it, that's why you need to eat it then. So it's not good to put it away for tomorrow and things like that, because it loses all of its prana then. Yeah, because the cooking has awakened it. So keeping your vegetables definitely under a week, you can do with refrigeration, or you would need it in most cases. And then from there, it depends. Sweet potatoes will stay good longer than that, of course. Yeah.
So, I mean, earlier you spoke about freshness of food, but in today's context, sometimes it's so hard to always cook fresh food. And sometimes people resort to an option of just refrigerating the food and having them the next day. What are the implications on our health when we do such things?
Yeah, there are implications. What it does is the food becomes tamasic when it loses its prana. So that's the effect. So there's a dulling effect. Yeah, that's what tamasic food does, is it dulls the mind and the body. I have a lady that has worked with me for many, many years, and for years she held on and kept wanting to have, leftover from dinner for breakfast the next day. And finally, when we convinced her to do otherwise, she would tell you, oh my gosh, she had so much more energy. Because then if you think about it, a third of your food is dead, basically. Yeah. And so to be able to add prana to the body, because that's what you're doing, is you're adding that life force to the body and the mind. Yeah. So if you have to go from lunch to dinner, it's a few hours. Okay, that's not too bad. But longer than that is not a good idea. Yeah.
And then very
Definitely
popular.
don't want to reheat the food.
Right. Okay. Cannot reheat the food. Okay. Got it. And one very popular thing is always, oh, let's go starchless. If you want to go on a diet, you want to lose weight fast, let's just do away with rice. That's what we often hear, like no carbs, no carbs, no carbs diet. Can we really pursue a no carbs diet?
Well, lots of people have, but then I end up treating them with all kinds of illnesses. So, and so no, this is not smart at all. That, we don't get fat from carbohydrates. We get fat from overeating and not chewing. Yeah. We get fat from excess, not from any particular food. All right. So it's the excess of any of them. And so that's one of the main things in Ayurveda, is that we keep it moderate. That's what moves us towards sattva, is to not have the extremes. So the idea is, and I can tell you my experience is, that when you take up these practices, that you never have to think about your weight again. I mean, goes up a little bit, down a little bit, and it doesn't take up space anymore in the mind. And that's pretty great. So when we don't chew the food and we overeat in one sitting, in one meal, or we snack, all of those things I talked about with Agni, those things, that's why we put on weight, because your body can't digest it and it just puts it somewhere.
Yeah. So now we have a question. Tejas has asked, does Ayurvedic food provide a solution to weight loss? So is there, like, I think she's trying to hint at what are the food combinations that would help us or facilitate weight loss? That's the question.
Okay. And so the things I just mentioned, chewing, not eating between meals. But the other thing then is to have a good, if you're an adult, for a child, it might be slightly different. But as an adult, a 60-40 balance. 60% of the meal should have primarily the sweet taste, rice or a whole grain of sorts, and a sweet vegetable, sweet potato, beetroot, things of that nature, zucchini and whatever. Yeah. And then the other 40% would be made up of a legume and an extractive vegetable, which would be the dark leafy greens like spinach or kale or collard greens or broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, those kinds of things. And so that kind of a balance, that'll maintain the body. And if you've been doing those other things, you'll lose weight. You'll lose it sometimes kind of quickly. Yeah. But then the idea is that you maintain that. Now, if someone is, and so you just keep doing that 60-40 balance. Now, if someone is, seriously obese, we might adjust that just a little bit. Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have another question here. I think it's pertinent to the earlier point that you've made. Reheating food on stove versus microwave. Is it okay
Oh,
or to reheat the food even on using stove, or we should just completely avoid reheating food?
completely avoid reheating food. Yeah, as much as, and if you've had, let's say you had something for lunch and you really want it to be warm, you're having it for dinner, then put some hot water on it. Just put a little hot water there. Yeah, and that's a better approach. Microwaves were never a good idea uh, for all kinds of reasons. The main reason related to food is that it kills all the prana. Yeah, so there's nothing left. It may have some taste, but in terms of your body being able to use nourishment from it, it's not there. So makes good storage. Just store things in there and don't use it.
Yeah. I think one common perception, or rather a comment that we often hear is that, oh, vegetarians, I don't know how are you going to get your protein? I mean, there's no protein when you in vegetables. Then how do you take them? How do you need to find substitute for proteins? And people then end up resorting to genetically modified food, or other type of soy food products. So, and what's your take on that?
Okay. Yes. Well, let's see. I have been a vegetarian for about 40, I don't know, I think it's 46 years or something like that, a long time. And we need a good balance of food and good proportions of food in our diet, and we need to be able to digest what we do consume. And so legumes are something that would be part of that. Or if one was having meat, then you'd have meat in that 20% of your meal. Now, you're not going to become a bodybuilder doing that, but you're going to have a really nice, good balance in the body. And so then I suggest that you not worry about protein. What you need to pay attention to is, am I digesting what I'm consuming? Because that will be plenty in terms of what's needed to have a strong, healthy body. And I'm pretty good evidence of that. So
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really very, very enriching. I mean, you've really broadened our perspectives. So if a person, after hearing our conversation today, decides to actually make a change in his lifestyle and pursue a diet that's aligned with the Ayurvedic principles, where can one start?
okay. Well, you can take a look at our website, halepule.com. And the word Hale Pule is Hawaiian, because I was in Hawaii for 20 years, and it means house of prayer. So that's what we aim to offer, is that we aim to offer Ayurveda in a way that's available for everyone, and that helps us to be able to be more of our true self. And so how you get started, you can take a look at our website, and there are lots of other resources these days. But be careful, because some of it is very oriented in terms of the modern medical approach. And Ayurveda is not that strong in that regard. We do need to look at the whole entire system and look at how everything is playing a role. And the other thing is that we look at the way we treat disease or solve problems is that we look to the root cause and we take away the root cause. And then we do things to support the body and mind to come back to their natural balance, which they naturally want to do. All of us were born with sattva. Yeah, and so that sattva is what we want to move back toward. So so that's one way, and we have courses online, and we have trainings as well in person, hopefully again soon. But so what I would suggest though is that you start to pay attention to some of the things that we've talked about today, and then start trying them out in your life. That's the best way to take up something new, is that you take a few things, make the changes, see what results you get. And then from there, you'll be more inspired, and then you go on and do some more. And, I had a lady recently, and, it was just all very foreign to her. And so I told her, I said, okay, just chew your food and, and try to stop the snacking. Yeah. And, and she had difficulty with her sleep. And in a week and a half, she noticed how much better her sleep was because she was chewing her food. And her children are also sleeping better. And, that's because Agni's not working during the sleep. And so we're able to actually go and get peacefully, into a restful place to have good sleep.
I mean, we often hear that food is one way to prevent us from falling ill, but can food also help us heal from illnesses?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Again, if a person is ill, that's one of the things we do is look to how do we balance the six tastes and the elements. Because if a person is ill, there's some imbalance in those elements that's going on. So the food can be used in that way. Typically, Agni has to be taken care of first. But so there's, we go to very simple food if someone's sick. And then as their Agni shows that they're ready to progress to something more, then that's very helpful. And then obviously people who have problems with undereating and that too, the food, food is meant to be a sacred connection with nature on a daily basis. Yeah. It's become very mechanical a lot in our lives today. And the more you bring it back to that opportunity to sit down, to be present with yourself, to be present with the divine, and to be present with what those plants have to offer us. Yeah, because they have their prana and their intelligence to offer us. And that's a very special thing.
I really love how you phrased it. It's so nice. It's really so nice. Food is a sacred connection to nature. That's very well said. So to just summarize this morning's discussion, so you shared that we should all pay attention to our Agni, the digestive fire, and typically we should ensure that we have 60% of sweet taste food, and that includes even grains and root vegetables and etc. And 40% of legumes and dark leafy green vegetables. That would
Mhm.
give a good balance. And you also advised us not to reheat food as much as possible.
Mhm.
And no to microwave oven. And you also said don't have a next day food. Try to have fresh food because that would sustain the prana, the life force of food ingredients. And you also shared that having too much of onions or garlic will just overstimulate, and that would then result us to uncomfortable experiences. And you also spoke about ghee and the importance of ghee, that it also
Mhm.
helps to facilitate digestion in a way. And mushrooms are actually considered as tamastic. I think that's an interesting fact because a lot of vegetarian dishes tend to have mushrooms, right? But
Mhm. Mhm.
we learned that actually mushroom as tamastic in nature, and milk and cereal, popular. I mean, contrary to the popular notion, it's not really a great combination, milk and cereal. And can we also add banana and milk as well?
Can it, which kind? Oh,
Can we add banana and milk to that list as well as not
right,
good combination?
right. Yes. Mm.
Yeah. And fruits actually can be cooked to facilitate easy digestion. And it's important to always have the six different tastes to keep life going. Thank you so much for sharing all these pointers. And you also shared with us about the course that you offer. And I really hope that our youths will, sign up for those programs and broaden their perspectives and lead a much more happy and, nutritious life, if I may use that. Any final closing words from you, Myra?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me, and also that as I started with, food is either your best medicine or your best poison. Let it be your friend. Let it be a fun and intimate relationship, and it helps us, in relating with others too. So it brings us we need to come into our heart about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Myra. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for spending your time with
yeah,
us. Take care. See you
yeah.
soon.
Good, very good. Namaste.
Namaste.